It's all top-down driven activity. Government is the biggest employer. Government decides everything. We don't do anything to incentivize entrepreneurial activity and incentivize them to stay here. Foreign investments flow to USA. That's why the biggest companies want to be listed in the United States, nowhere else. People want US economy because it's still the pillar of entrepreneur and wealth. We feed on productivity in Canada. That is what we love to do. If you tie it back to religion, I understand where religion comes from. It was a way to quantify your reality, to give sense, purpose, and moral guidance to a populace or a species of human beings who didn't understand anything. It was chaos, The basis of my book was just to kind of highlight these distinctions between collaborative economics, primal economics. Primal is where you go to play those dirty games that animals play in the kingdom. If you look at nature, you see primal economics everywhere. When government takes from you and then subsidizes poor people, the premise of their charity is off of a primal act. Yeah. I stole from you first, and now I'm playing the moral game.
Welcome to the Bourne Files. I'm your host, Joseph Bourne, and today I'm going to be interviewing Nicholas Tartaglia. He attended Concordia University in Montreal and is the author of two books, The Intelligent Millennial and Millennial Economics, Structuring Economic Consciousness in Individuals. He bases his work following the practices of the Austrian School of Economics, and he publishes his insights on macroeconomics and geopolitics on his Substack. Now, my conversation with Nick. The reason I wanted to talk to you today is because basically everybody, it's no secret the economic situation that's going on in Canada right now. And now we have another metric to measure it by. So Canadian economist Trevor Tome, he actually ran the numbers. He compared our GDP per capita to Alabama's, and turns out we're poorer. So I just wanted to parse that out. So before we even get into the whole story, what is GDP per capita? How is it different than just overall GDP of a country? And why is the metric being used in this current situation?
So GDP, the reason why I always like to say that GDP is a distorted metric, I get the fundamental level. I get why you can say we can use that as kind of like a broad metric to say, well, let's look at this comparable. So GDP per capita basically says gross domestic product, how much people are sort of spending, or the overall spending of an economy relative to the amount of people in the economy. The thing you have to kind of compare is, one is the Canadian economy is a very unproductive, stagnant, non-entrepreneurial economy. Mm-hmm. You compare it to USA, where you have so much wealth, so many people, and so much entrepreneurial activity. Like the biggest companies in the world are all listed on the stock market in the United States. These are all trillion-plus companies. Like these companies blow out of the water just our GDP alone. Yep. So when you take that into account, it's like anything America does, if you're going to compare it to Canada, Canada's always going to be secondary because it's such a bigger, wealthier country that actually wants to tap into entrepreneurs and the productive capacity of the market. Whereas here, it's all top-down driven activity. Government is the biggest employer. Government decides everything. So kind of back to my GDP point is, GDP can also be distorted because you can spend money, and the more money you spend, the more money gets to the economy, the more the GDP goes up. So that's why when you see, for example, like when during a recession or you get negative GDP quarterly after quarterly, well, the government's gonna be like, fuck, we don't want this recession or this depression. What do we got to do? We got to lower rates. We got to make credit expansion easier. So borrowing becomes easier. So the easier it is to borrow, the more people will spend. And then the GDP kind of goes right back up.
So is that the disconnect here? So are we looking at the bottlenecks? Like we talk about bottlenecks in businesses, but this is like a bottlenecked economy where the government is squeezing entrepreneurs and businesses with red tape, and there's no incentive to actually start a business and grow a business, and there's no speed. Like we're a very slow economy. So this is the disconnect that we're seeing.
It's the regulation. Everything has too many barriers here, so everything has to get this permit, that permit. Just to deal with our tax system is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So everything is just a hurdle after a hurdle. Entrepreneurs here, the moment they're able to, they want to free themselves. Where do they go? They go to the United States. They don't stay here. We don't do anything to incentivize entrepreneurial activity and incentivize them to stay here. And the only way to do that is by giving them more power. The more power you give to an entrepreneur, the more they want to benefit from it. Here we punish them. We make them look like the enemy. In America, half the population makes them out to be the enemy, the other half the population understands their value. Here, you don't have that. So, the productive nature of the American economy is multitudes different than the Canadian economy. So, almost by every metric, well, I wouldn't say every metric because you can look at socioeconomic metrics and kind of comparables and see the similarities. But in terms of productive capacity of an economy to move forward, generate wealth for its people, the USA is miles ahead. That's why foreign investments flow to USA, not to Canada or anywhere else in the world. That's why the biggest companies want to be listed in the United States, nowhere else. People want US economy because it's still the pillar of entrepreneur and wealth. The rest of the
Yeah.
world is secondary or miles behind the United States.
100%. And I even have this chart here. So basically, I'm going to throw it up during editing, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
says the time up to obtain a general construction permit in OECD nations, and Canada is actually second slowest out of all the OECD nations. So that's kind of like where I'm kind of getting at when you see like even the OSAP thing going on right now, where people are saying that we need to give more education through subsidizing people's grants and stuff, people's education. Well, even if we subsidize their education and they get a good education, when you send them into the market, there's nothing for them to do because there are no businesses that are growing. I have a landscaping buddy. He says it's so hard for him to scale his landscaping business just because of all the red tape and how much competition. Because if you're a small company and you're trying to compete with the bigger companies, they have the resources and they have the finances to be able to get through this bottlenecked economy, and
Right.
small businesses don't, so it's hard to grow.
Correct. The big companies can create their own educational programs. They can filter their own people. They can create the workforce they need. Small and medium businesses don't. They depend on the educational system. And this goes back to why, like here we subsidize, but we'll subsidize social programs and programs that have lead to zero productive capacity in the economy. Those are the majority of the people that'll have all the debt, that can't find a job, end up getting a minimum wage, and then we're going to subsidize them, expand our debt as an economy to subsidize people that yield zero productive capacity. And then those are the same people that are going to preach us how to solve economic problems and create wealth for people that are coming here from foreign countries. Like we feed on productivity in Canada. That is what we love to do. The
100%.
moment something's unproductive, like go for it. We need more of it because that means that they're not independent. You know, like they're gonna depend on the system. They're gonna require the system to do everything for them. Give them more debt, lower the interest rates, subsidize them, give them food stamps. Like we breed welfarism here.
Yeah, it's funny. What is that thing that Pierre always says when liberals do taxing, they see something moving and they tax it. When it stops moving, they subsidize it. Like this is the whole cycle we have going on here. So I guess the reason why I wanted to bring you in specifically is because I actually have your book here, and I think everyone should go read this. It's called Millennial Economics. And there's a thing in the book where you basically talk about the bad behaviors of an economy, like why bad behaviors in an economy on an individual level straps an economy. So I kind of wanted to get into this and like you kind of parse it out with these two metrics. There's primal characteristics and then there's collaborative characteristics. So and you bring like a moral kind of thing to it, right? So like tell me about the morality between these bad behaviors and the primal characteristics and the collaborative characteristics.
Well, I always say, like, if you tie it back to religion, I understand where religion comes from. It's from a place in a world where you didn't understand anything. So it was a way to quantify your reality and kind of give sense, purpose, and moral guidance to a populace or a species of human beings who didn't understand anything. It was chaos, you know? You needed some sort, it was the first book to write, to be shared. It's what people used to learn how to read. So it became a pillar of human civilization, human development. But the thing is, it's not the only source of morality because at the end of the day, a lot of the moral preachings in the book, you can dissect them through economic lens. So back to your point of like collaborative or primal. In collaboration, it's voluntary exchanges. We work together to get to some sort of point. Like the teaching of, teach a man to fish. Don't just give him a fish. Well, the
Hmm.
reason why is because one is I'm collaborating with you. I'm going to help you move forward on your own. Whereas the other one is I'm going to feed you, but then you don't know how to do anything on your own. So now you become dependent on me. So
100%.
there's a leeching mechanism for that. So there's no collaboration in that because sure, I can feed you. There's charity in that, which is at the individual level. it's collaborative and it's moral. But at the same time, if you want to help your fellow man, you got to go beyond that step. You got to help him step above himself so he can propel forward. So at the basis of my book is just to kind of highlight these distinguishings between collaborative economics, primal economics. Primal is where you go to play those dirty games that animals play in the kingdom.
Yeah.
I will sneak up on you. I will cheat you. I will take from you. I will deceive you. If you look at nature, you see primal economics everywhere. You look at a gang of monkeys attacking each other. Then you look around the world where in the like the different cities and where there's gangs, people are attacking each other the same way you see gangs of monkeys attacking each other. There is no difference. We just think we're so special as a species because, well, we have this label that we're human beings and we can articulate way more than them and we have thumbs. But if you go back to our roots, our behavior, especially at a primal level, it's the same thing. But then in nature, when you look at collaboration, you see beautiful things as well. Like a bird who will take the fur from an animal, will sit on the top of an animal, either eat all the insects on them, and the animal won't be bothered, or takes the fur, goes to their nest, and makes a nest out of the fur from another animal. And there's just transfer of energy. There's no chaos in that. All you see is people benefiting. One animal gets to have the insects taken off, and then the fur that would be dead anyway, the birds take it and go build a nest to make a home. No one is imposing itself on the other. There's an ecosystem collaborating. And the
Hmm.
best ecosystems are where humans or any social organism collaborate and works together. And so the point was, well, if I'm going to distinguish this moral dichotomy, you got to break it down into frameworks: primal, collaboration. And charity only thrives in collaboration. When government takes from you and then subsidizes poor people, the premise of their charity is off of a primal act. I
Yeah.
stole from you first, and now I'm playing the moral game. Yeah, but it starts off as a primal behavior. So you're hiding behind some sort of charitable action that in reality it's theft, because you can't justify theft just because you do something good with the money after, because then any crime can be justified that way.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's almost like an extended adolescence. Like we're treating poor people. I always find it very strange when people try to justify the actions of the government by telling us about all these poor people that they literally don't interact with at all. I myself come from a very low income background, so I understand how poor people kind of think, and I guarantee you, like when the OSAP thing happened, poor people didn't even know that OSAP
Mhm.
was subsidized 85%. I guarantee you, most people, they're just going about their lives. They don't pay attention to politics. So when I hear people try to bring in, oh, the reason why we're doing this is to subsidize this. These people are not children. These people are adults. They make their own decisions. And I think the best thing about your book is that instead of communism bringing everything into a commune, like everyone's a big community, you break it down on the individual level. And you say, no, no, no. If you want to have an optimal society, you need to optimize for individual excellence. And that's exactly what I think we should do and what we're missing in Canada. Do you agree?
Right. I absolutely agree. The other one is a top-down solution, centralization, pyramid style. It's like majority at the top who dictate the trend and the cycles. Everyone at the bottom must succumb to the whims of the people at the top, and everyone has to behave the same way in order for the whims of those at the top to, like, sure, you can get some outcomes like China. They can do some good job on certain social conditions, but it's because the population obeys and does what they say. So in the short term, you can get fantastic results, but the question becomes, is it sustainable? And then
Hmm.
history tells you no, it is never sustainable, because it's impossible for each generation to be able to do that exact same thing, feed off of one another, leech off of a previous generation, build debt on their behalf, cause inflation for them to generate all the wealth they want, and the next generation is the one that suffers the consequences, and then they implode the system because the system is against them now.
Yeah.
It is not sustainable. It doesn't matter how much it feels good, it looks good. If we look at history, every empire has failed, every generation ends up having some sort of problem, all because this game cannot be repeated at a successful level. At a micro level, maybe. At a
Yeah.
macro level, impossible.
Yeah. I actually, it's so funny when I'm looking into like the differences in socialism and communism in different countries. So people talk about, oh, how could socialism be so bad when China does it? It
Mhm.
looks so good on paper. And it's like, okay, well, the premise And the actual argument, like the idea, is actually bad because when you institute it into different nations, it looks different, but ultimately it leads to authoritarianism. It leads to the government is now in control of everything, and if you are not on the government side, like in China, then you're not a part of the economic system. They'll just boot you out of the system. They'll turn off your phone, they'll turn off your Wi-Fi, they'll kick you off of the train. Like these are crazy stories that I hear from China, but people they don't look at it like that way. They look at it as just the good parts and not the bad parts. So like in terms of socialist history, like if you look at socialism historically, do you see a lot of similarities between his socialism in history and how it breaks down an economy and in Canada, and like what comparisons would you draw between like say like Venezuela or Cuba or any of those places?
The key the where you're like the referencing back to the point where you see these differentials between different countries and economies is because of the fact that at the end of the day, if someone or the political power that'll then push for this ideology, it all depends on how capable they are in generating business activity or economic activity. Okay, so China, for example, what they did so well was not the fact that they independently were able to create such entrepreneurial activity, is the fact that they were able to replicate the US economy. So
Mm,
they took the best of the businesses and they replicated them. And then they allowed that to flourish and build off of. But it all came down from the center. It's the center that decided we need to replicate this, and that. So the political system over there was smart, at least from a collective standpoint, to understand what it needed to do to try to propel the nation forward. Whereas other countries, oftentimes, when it comes to socialism, is it's not like let's replicate the best of a capitalist economy. It's let's just control the resources and then benefit from it. And then, oh, well, everything falls apart. Well, no shit, because you're not building a sustainable economy. Even if you know nothing of entrepreneurial activity or business activity, at least replicate, copy, imitate what functions. And then
mm,
from there, you try to maneuver the pieces to see how the state can kind of leverage that economic power to benefit itself to become more sustainable, which is why China has done a pretty good job of expanding its power. But what people forget is when the government dictates these trends, the trends and all the decisions, all the wealth, all the money, all the debt is tied to the center. So the moment a population or an economy or people want to build this individualistic lens where they want to separate and go their own route, then you put at danger the risk, or the center decisions become at risk. If I invest $1 million for the family, and then everyone in the family starts to do the exact opposite of what I need them to do for me to reap my money, to get my investment back and a return on it, then I'm going to go crazy and I'm going to want everybody to start listening to me and doing as I say because you are putting my wealth at risk. The
mhm.
same thing with the government. If the government drives economic activity, then you need to obey their plans because if you don't obey their plans, you pose a threat to the system.
Yep. Even when you look at the history of how China became capitalistic, it was all because they noticed that it works. There was a bunch of farmers, and the farmers were tired of listening to the government and doing all their stuff because it made them unproductive. People didn't have an incentive to make more grain or grow more crops. And then what they did is they started secretly growing, competing with each other and growing more crops, and they made multiple times more crops than they would have if they hadn't been competing. The government caught wind of that. They brought the farmers in. They were going to kill them. But then a general went, hey, they're producing a lot of food. Like, we should probably look into what they're doing. And then they started replicating that system. So, like, this whole idea that capitalism is evil is so strange because it's actually the moral system that goes along with how humans interact naturally. So, I really don't understand
Correct.
that.
So the
But
implementation, like in China, China's implementation of free market characteristics is not to say that China is capitalist
yeah.
or like how people like to say Canada is a capitalist economy. It's no. The issue is we need to understand is we operate within a mixed economy. A lot of global major economies are mixed. The question becomes to what extent is the government in the economy, and then to what extent is the free market capable of expanding on its own?
So what do you think about that? What like if you gave up like percentage, what percentage are we at in terms of socialism versus
In
capitalism
Canada,
in
I think we're
Canada?
at least we're well, we're not 100% because we still have some space to do our things, but I would say we're definitely past like I'd say past 50%. Like if we were to take
Damn.
all federal government, all provincial employees. If you take the schooling system, the medical system, like I would say a good chunk, roughly 50% is directly or indirectly benefiting from government subsidies from an
Yeah.
employment standpoint. And that is why you're seeing the last couple of years is a pure stagnation in the economy. The economy is going nowhere. And so
Hmm.
in history, when the economy goes nowhere, you revert back to its mean. What do governments do? They focus on infrastructure spending. What does Canada want to do? What does most major economies want to do? They want to spend on infrastructure, energy, and commodities because they know that they can spend money immediately on sectors that generate immediate results.
Yeah,
So
100%.
we are in this unproductive environment because government dictates too much.
Hmm.
If we were to collapse, if we were to remove 10% of the government employment base, like I'm pretty sure Canada would right to into recession.
Wow.
We are dependent on the government. We are not self-sustainable as an economy right now. We're not.
Yeah, and
Like
it's
if you take my province, Quebec, the casinos, the alcohol, the marijuana, and the energy grid, all government controlled.
yeah. Even us in Ontario with LCBO, like it's ridiculous. I remember when I was talking to my girlfriend about this. I'm like, why is there no other like companies that sell like good alcohol? Why is it just LCBO? It was like that's how it is. The government regulates it. So it's just kind of
No,
ridiculous.
and then during COVID, one of my favorite things always during COVID is like, let's close every small medium business. You keep the big business open, who can
Yeah.
obviously thrive and dominate, and then it's like, okay, well, alcohol stores are open, who benefits government. Where marijuana stores are open, oh, of course, government controls it as well. The casino is open, oh, of course, government
Hmm.
owns it. But everyone else is shut down and don't work. Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Because
of course.
the small entrepreneurs are not necessary for the economy to maintain itself. As long as government operations can function, the economy is relatively stable because most of the economy depends on the government.
Yeah, it's so weird because like that's the whole argument that I think a lot of people woke up during COVID because it didn't make sense. It's like how
Mm,
come McDonald's is open, but I can't
correct.
open my small restaurant? It's still restaurant. We're still selling food either way. We can even if I have to install the same practices just to stay open. I know a lot of my favorite restaurants in my local community closed. Literally
Yep.
during COVID because they literally couldn't operate their businesses. And then when they tried to reoperate their businesses, they took such a big hit they couldn't recover. But this
Correct.
is this is kind of like where I'm getting at with this like socialization. Did you see the reaction on online with the OSAP cuts?
No. I've been
Yes,
so focused on Iran, the Middle Eastern geopolitics right now that I
makes
haven't really
sense.
paid attention to anything else. Tell me
Okay,
though.
well, I was just debating a bunch of people online because basically what happened was OSAP was giving grants that were about 85% of the tuition could be subsidized. This is not everyone, but
Mhm.
that's like the max that you could get subsidized. And then what Doug Ford did is he reduced that to 25% grants and 75% loans. I was saying, well, this is actually a good way to save some money while still being able to get people an affordable education that's actually you could actually get because you can still get the loan portion and then you could just pay it back. You're just paying back more loans. And then a bunch of
Mhm.
people are attacking me saying, oh, this is not making it accessible for low income families. But I'm like, you're still getting the loan part. You just have to pay back the loan. So you can still finance your education. So,
Was it
I,
is it at low interest as well?
well, it's zero. It's zero
Oh,
interest.
so
So it's
then
free money.
it's free money. You just have to give back. You see, that's the thing is when it's not free gifts, Canada fucking goes nuts.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be given to us, or else we're bad. We're too wealthy. Our economy is that's the issue here is we're too wealthy, and that's why every entrepreneur wants to leave. The moment they can build an online or independent operation that doesn't need to be in Canada, they want to leave.
100%, 100%. I actually follow forgot what their name was. They're like a snow removal company. This kid, he's like in his
Oh, in
20s.
Ontario?
Yeah, well, I think he's
Yeah.
in Winnipeg. I forget. I
Oh,
forget
okay.
where he's
Because there's
at.
a guy in Ontario that has a big operation and big on social media as well.
Yeah, and he's like saying, "Yeah, the next thing I'm gonna do is grow my company so that we can get it into the United
There
States."
you go.
Because, he did, I think he just did over like a couple million. I think he did over 2 million this year, and he's like, "Yeah, my operation's so big now, time to go to the United States." And it's like, yeah,
Right.
that's what everyone does.
That's the every single person I know that's an entrepreneur, the end goal is if I can leave, I'm happy to leave.
100%. Yeah, well, it's just more opportunity over there. But yeah, I that's another thing too that I want to talk to about. I saw that you were posting something about mining, and you're saying this is something that everyone's
Right.
missing out on. So opportunities for young people in Canada, obviously they're very dwindling, they're very low. It's hard to get a job, da 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 da. Da. So I saw you posting about this mining thing. So you think you can just like fill us in on what this
Yeah,
is?
for sure.
Yeah.
So back to my point where, okay, so the typical cycles we saw was one, like I knew inflation was coming. I was the crazy lunatic when I said inflation was coming. We had it, said the rates went up. No shit, that's kind of what a logical macro analyst would have figured the same thing, but everybody was delusional, listening to government, no, we'll never raise rates, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, now everybody's suffering the consequences, so you had that. Then the second part of it is you're at the end tail of a productive cycle where now you're going down this unproductive cycle. So inflation is first. Second is in stagflation. Where are we now? We're in the stagflationary environment, and it's only the start. You're going to see inflation, like we saw food inflation in Canada is high.
Yeah, sorry. Do you think you could just give a small definition for stagflation?
So stagflation is basically when you're seeing, like typically what you do is in an inflationary environment is prices are going up, but you're seeing wages go up, you're seeing wealth go up, you're seeing GDP go up. In a stagflationary environment, basically what it is you're pumping money into the system, but everything is still going sideways. You're not
Mm,
seeing business being able to be created. You're not seeing the GDP being boosted. You're not seeing employment data go up or improve. So you're seeing this sideways movement while money is being injected into the system. So it only exponentially increases the inflationary impact because when you inject liquidity into the market or credit, you need a productive output in order to offset inflation, or else you just get skyrocketing prices all the time.
got it.
So this is why you're getting things like high food inflation, and you're seeing no wage increases, employment is collapsing. So basically, we're in the stagflationary environment. Typically, the end result of a stagflationary environment is recession and depression. And this is where governments will do everything they can to avoid this problem. Because one, if we get a depression or recession, government can no longer spend like they're spending. They can't justify that anymore. Two, that would lead to one of the biggest wealth destruction moments, which would tie into the housing market. Canada is heavily dependent on the housing market. If you cause a ripple effect there that causes a kind of like a disinflate or a deflationary force on the housing market, you will have a massive impact on the wealth effect, which means that consumer spending in Canada could collapse. Again, government can't justify all spending while people are freaking losing their money and people don't have money anymore. So we're at this end tail of that. And the government, what they're going to do to prevent this, and which is what you're seeing on every continent through every government, is they're going to focus on infrastructure, energy, and mining because those are immediate jobs they can subsidize and create. It's immediate. It's not like you have to invest in sort of software or system, test it out, wait for several years for the results to plan out. You can immediately subsidize the mining sector and force employment right away. You're able to do it because it's an immediate response. So you're seeing this mandate across the globe. So we're in this cycle now where people and governments want mining, they want commodities, and they want to build out their economy. How we, the next generations, can benefit from that, even though it sucks that it's going to be government driven because of the subsidies. But the point is, if you're going to find a place in this economy, trades, technical jobs that put you out into the real world where you help extract natural resources and be a part of that ecosystem or those industries, you will find plenty of opportunity and plenty of incredible opportunities that pay really high jobs. They are some of the highest paying jobs. But the issue in Canada, back to this, we're so intellectual, we go to school, blah, 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 is we have this massive ego that we think that someone making 100 grand with no university degree is somehow a lesser person than someone making $50,000 with 2 degrees from university.
Hmm. Yeah,
That it's twisted.
it's so funny too because when you look at historically like what liberals are against is like the elite class. And then if you look
Right.
at how they are now, they are the elite class. They're the ones with the highest degrees, they're the ones with the most education, the highest paying jobs. And then if you look at like how far $100,000 can actually get you in this economy, it's like nothing. You're like living a regular life. You know, maybe you
Right.
have a down payment on a house, maybe you have a car, but you like, oh, sorry. But
No, no, you're
maybe
good.
yeah, maybe you have a down payment on a house, maybe you have a car, but like you're living the life of a regular person with $100,000. So imagine how someone with 80,000, 70,000, 60, 45,000 is doing. Like people with high school degrees can only command about 45 to $50,000 a year. So this is where we're going. I mean, hey guys, when are we going to course correct? So this is what I'm going to ask you, and this is going to probably give me the second last question before you wrap it up. You're prime minister for 10 years. I'm going to give you 10 years because that's how long the Liberals have been in government.
Yeah.
You're prime minister for 10 years. What are your first three moves?
First move, pull Malay. The fire a ton of the useless departments that do absolutely nothing but cost money. There's no uh, system functionality. Like I'm not going to go right away and destroy the medical system. I'm not going to go right away and destroy the schooling system because those are integrated into the economy that I don't want to, you don't turn it off immediately and cause chaos. You want a slow regression. Where you can't turn off the lever is those useless departments that serve absolutely no purpose other than just play bureaucracy and idealistic games like the Department of Women and the Department of this affair and the Department of this person's feelings are hurt, like all that crap gone. You're
HR
fired.
departments done.
Done. All fired. That's the first thing. Second thing, deregulate the mining industry. Let mining companies tap into our natural resources because I think it's one of the only escape routes we have as a Canadian economy to tap in back into the wealth. Deregulate, let the mining industry move. It doesn't mean that you don't have to care about the natural resources. All it means is that you're just saying tap into what we have, but be smart about it. At the end of the day, what people don't realize is these companies, we're not where we were 50 years ago when it comes to mining. A lot of the companies know that if they don't do things from a social responsibility standpoint, they don't work with local communities, with the natives, and care about the environment, that the business, one, will not have sustainable investors, and two, the communities around their projects are going to cause them so much problems that they're never going to be able to go into production and make money. So they have the incentive purely from a cultural pressure standpoint and the communities around them. So you don't need government to mandate these things while businesses know they need to do it because we've learned from the last cycles. We're not ignorant as we were before to making all these mistakes. We understand what needs to be done. So that would be the second, tap into our natural resource sector. And then third, my thing would be to heavily, heavily focus on reducing personal income taxes. My objective would be this: all income tax at individual level should be eliminated. Maintain business taxes for now, but income at an individual level should not exist. No human being should be paying taxes while businesses don't pay taxes. It's the
Yep.
individual that should be free from taxation, not everybody, not the institutions. So for now, while you regress, fine, leave the tax because you can't go zero right away. You have to have this regression plan. But individuals should pay no taxes. At the end of my book, I talk about this idea where up until the age of 21, why is anyone paying a tax? Let kids work. Because most young people are making minimum wage. Let them keep every penny they make. Let them work. Let them try different jobs. Let everybody keep their money at an individual level. That to me are those would be my three focus pillars.
Yeah, that's actually a really good list. That's actually a really good list. I actually had this idea, and let me run it by you and see how you think about it.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to create this sort of reverse income tax. So
Hmm.
instead of the
A
more,
Milton, like a Milton Friedman idea.
well, not even that. So you know the way income tax works now, where the more money you make, the more you get taxed. I
Yeah.
would reverse it, have it you lower the amount of money you're taxed, the more money you make, and the more productive you are. So if someone was to say do overtime, and that would put them in a higher tax bracket, that would actually lower the amount of money that they're going to be taxed, and they would take more home. And then that would incentivize people to work more hours than less hours. Because nowadays, I've been working with low wage workers basically my whole life. And I talk to them and they're like, I'll be like, hey, are you taking the overtime? Every single time I ask someone, they all say no. I'm like, why are you saying no? They're like, yeah, you get paid more for overtime per hour, but you get taxed so much more, it's not worth it. So I'm
Correct.
like, why are we like people? It's not a joke. It's not an illusion. It's not a delusion.
Mhm.
People actually don't want to work more when they know they're not going to get rewarded more. So
Correct.
what do you think about the way that we have it, the structure of our society where we punish people that make more money?
Correct.
And this is not just like businesses. This is people, individuals.
Correct. Correct. The only pondering thought I get on that one is what about the people that work unemployed that are like the youth that can only get minimum wages, or the poor people who are trying to get out of poverty, they're going to have these minimum wage jobs. Would they by default then be have the greatest consequence because they're at the lowest tax bracket?
Well, I would actually just have the highest like tax rate would be super low. It'd be like 15%. So then,
Correct, correct. Okay, so at the end of the day, the plan is to regress.
yeah,
Like one way or another, it's how do we entirely regress the tax system at an individual level in a way to incentivize productivity and working without punishing people for building their own wealth and generating their own wealth. And
100%.
I think that there's a discussion to be made because the thing is that we have to regress away from these high tax system because the economy is so dependent on tax revenue. We can't turn off the fountain right away. The moment we turn it off, our Canadian economy goes right into a Great Depression, most likely. So you need to resist regression. And that can be definitely part of the regression where you say, okay, we're going to cut the highest tax bracket. We're going to make it as fixed as possible. And then anything above this is free, basically. It falls within the same form. At the end of the day, all you want to make sure is this. Can the youth and the poor people find a way out of poverty?
100%.
That's one. Two, the people that are working, do they have the ability to make enough money to survive? And secondly, if they work more, are they punished or they do get to reward the benefit of working more? Those are kind of the frameworks you need to build when you're thinking about how to go about removing the tax system. Because at the end of the way, at the end of the day, what you're trying to impose is merely another form of just regressing the tax system and empowering the individual to build wealth and save their money.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to be wrapping up soon, so I'm going to end this off with our closing question. What do you think there's the topic that they don't want us talking about is? There's a one topic that they don't want us to talk about.
I
What is
already
it?
have the answer to that one.
Go ahead.
Well, I would say is economics, because economics would encompass social dynamics, macroeconomics, and finance. So I think that that is the main topic because if you empower the individual at a financial level to understand their finances and the macroeconomic environment they're in, then nobody's gonna be one well, no one's gonna want the government at that point because everyone's gonna be pondering, well, if I know how to handle these things, I know how to manage these things, what purpose then does that government actually play in this society? So but that's why you tend to see that these classical liberals are now what we call libertarians today, or people that are very literate in macroeconomics or or very financially literate. They're all tend to be more libertarians, conservatives, people that want less government because they understand. Well, I know how to do this shit myself. I don't need you to treat me like a peasant and kind of give me money and feed me. I'll handle my own stuff. And then I'll help my friends and I'll help my family. I don't need you to do that because then I have some random stranger from Ottawa telling my people here how to do things when that has nothing to do with what we're doing here. Like these people in these ivory towers in a different state, in a different country doing what they want. No, no. Empower individuals economically, kind of back to my book, the power of consciousness. If you do that, I think that is where we change all of human civilization.
100%. I 100% agree with that. They want us to keep us uneducated in the things that would actually push the right agenda. Well, guys, it has been a great podcast with Nick Tartaglia. Go pick up his book, Millennial Economics, and I'll see you next time. I actually dropped that book. I'll drop the link to the book down in the description below. All right, guys, have a good day. Nick, thanks for coming on.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for tuning in on our conversation. If you found this content valuable, please consider liking and subscribing to help this channel grow so we can have more of these conversations in the future. Feel free to leave a comment below as I read all of them on what else you would like to see on who would you like to see me talk to next. Take care.